for this. And, I wish you all well in this conversation. But I just wanted to thank you all for being here. I want to make sure if you need anything going forward, you got Captain Barlow, Sergeant over here as well. And if you need anything down the road, I thank everyone here who supports the 270 officers that are out here every single day. I had the opportunity to go to an event tonight. It's a fundraiser for our SRT team. We have a special response team that's a standalone team in Stamford, and there's a benefit for them to raise some money for them. They are probably the top team in Connecticut, and we want to just get some more funding, so they stand. So that being said, my door's always open if you need something. I thank you, and my wife's in the car, and we're off to another event. So good luck.
Thank you very much. Once again, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. It's a very important issue, a very hot issue. There's been a lot of communication and miscommunication. Some yes, some no. We're hoping to be able to clarify and hope folks make folks comfortable with your vote and be able to present to you positive an attitude or be able to present to you propositions of why this charter revision is so important and some of the background that went into it. Our group is basically about community engagement and participation. And that's what this is. It's about engagement. And we hope you folks leave here with a better understanding of what's in this charter, how our charter works, and the revisions that were being proposed. I'll introduce Tom Lombardo. He was chairman of the commission. He and the commission members also deserve a great hand of thanks. They spent hundreds and hundreds of hours. I know my wife was on the finance committee. She was out there 3 nights a week, no dinners, but that's okay. I think it was for a good purpose. And I'm sure, and there were 5 committees in total. But as I said, it's a lot of hard work that went into it, a lot of dedication, a lot of research, and a lot of interviewing. Tom, I'm going to introduce this.
My wife was happy to get me out of the house. Tim Shaw told you what I do for a living. Doing it here for, 50 years now. I served on the Charter Revision Commission this time, twice before, as a member of the community. I've lived here all my life, and sometimes when I look at former members of elected and appointed boards, you try to give something back. Hopefully, do it without much damage. Barry called me this morning and asked me to do the introductions this evening, and I said I'd be happy to. Please pardon my back, folks. We had 15 commission members named. Give her a hand. She needs help getting her coat on her own. That's exactly. There were 15 members of the commission named out of about 60 some applicants. By state law, every municipality must have a charter revision commission named every 10 years. The charter must be reviewed every 10 years. And we wrote down 5 committees. Michael Arabina was chair of one. Stephen Loeb was chair of another. Shelley Michelson was chair of the third one. Anthony Kramberger, who was chair of the 4th one, and Clement Williams was chair of the 5th one. I'm going to take a moment to introduce the members of the commission. There are a number of them here tonight. I'll start over here with Karen Camparelli. Stand up. Next to you, J.R. McCollum. Walking along the back row. I don't see anyone else. The next row, Anthony Kramberger. Sue. Takes care of that row. Shelley Michelson. Nancy Lane is here in the front row. And last but not least, because we did everything alphabetically as we went along, is Clement Williams, who served on the commission, and he is part of the panel tonight with the majority leader of the Board of Representatives. Bradley Dukas was going to be part of the panel. Clement was kind enough to step in for Barry at the last minute. I think he made back-to-back calls and said, will you do the intro? And Clement has agreed to be on the panel. And we said, great. He had a meeting with the Chopin Point Board of Directors, Association Board of Directors tonight that conflicted. We had over 100 meetings, committee meetings, general meetings of the commission. They were all open meetings. They were all done via Zoom. Even those that were in person were hybrid. We had, as the state requires, a public hearing at the beginning and a public hearing at the end. And we did 2 public hearings at the beginning and 1 at the end. We had a lot of correspondence. We had testimony. The entire document, the full charter is about 178 pages. I would urge you not to read 178 pages unless you really have trouble sleeping. If you go online, the letter of transmittal is 20-some pages, and that went to Cynthia Bowser has just come in. She's the lady with the hat. She was on the commission as well. The letter of transmittal was 20-some pages. It gives you the synthesizes everything, and then there is a letter from council to the Board of Reps that is appreciably shorter. Those items that weren't changed, read them for sure if you enjoy, but they're not going to change whether it's an upvote or a downvote. All of that said, and Barry told me to limit myself to 4 minutes, 5 minutes. I think I did. I want to introduce Nina Sherwood. I think many of you know her. She's the majority leader of the Board of Representatives, and Clement Williams, who was on our Charter Revision Commission. He was previously the director of personnel for the city, has an extensive background in law and in federal government service and private practice. And these 2 folks can give you a very decent thumbnail sketch and answer questions as you toss them out. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Clement. But that's all right. Actually, I just want to go through just 2 seconds and go to the background of this. When we set this up, we wanted both sides to be represented, and we actually reached out certainly to the folks at the Yes Charter Revision Group, and we also reached out to the No. We've been dealing with the mayor's office since the 13th of October to try to get. We sent an invitation to her. We tried to get her here, a representative or somebody from the administration, and they kept me on the hook for a while. They didn't know if the mayor could make it. And I said, well, we'd like to have a representative here, somebody who can speak comfortably on the issues. I went back and forth, even this weekend, and this morning I got a call from one of her representatives saying no one was going to come. And I said, you can't even send a representative. And she said, there's no one that can come. And as actually last night, it was recommended one of the representatives come. I called him last night. He said he'd know if he would be able to. He'd call around. Well, he called me today. He said he couldn't make it. So it's not for not trying that we didn't have a full complement here of folks, because one side is important as the other. But we can certainly substantiate the reasons to vote it. Our group has been actively involved in it, as full disclosure, and we feel it's a really important issue. I'm going to introduce, we have Nina here, and we have Clement Williams here from our group, and we can discuss it. One of the things we've done this a few times before is folks have a lot of questions. So we really want to have brief presentation and really open up so you folks can ask the questions. We'll try to answer them as best we can. Nina, do you want to?
I'm gonna go first, and I will try to be brief. First thing I want to say is that the reason that I applied for the Charter Review Commission, I retired from Sony Music a number of years ago. Went to work for the city. I worked as the director of human resources and assistant director. Then in 1991, my wife and I had decided we were going to leave Stamford. COVID came. We decided to stay. I still wanted to do something. I've been in Stamford 30 years. The city's been very good to me. And I applied for the Charter Review Commission. And I thought that I could be helpful because I knew the city government. I'm going to try to go through this briefly, and I'm going to hit some points, and Nina's going to
probably smack me because I'm gonna probably go too long. But the first thing is, everybody keeps talking about the fact that the appointment process for the Board of Commissions is broken. And I don't think anyone disagrees with that. Our existing charter allows for a loophole. And literally, people can remain on most important boards and commissions indefinitely. The proposed charter change gives the mayor and the president of the Board of Reps and the mayor has exclusively the first 120 days to support someone. After that 120 days, it passes to the majority leader. That's the way the charter is set up now. The proposed, it
goes currently,
currently to the mayor,
it's 120
20
days
days.
for the mayor, then 120 days exclusively for the president, and then 90 days back to the mayor, and that's it. Never the majority.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So that's the way it works now. What we're proposing is, even though we have those provisions in there, what's been happening is you have these holdover appointments and people are holding over, and in some cases indefinitely. So the only thing that they've said is after the mayor, after the president of the Board of Reps, then if no one is put up after 240 days, then any member of the Board of Reps can put forth a name. But that person still has to be voted on by the full 40 members Board of Reps. So that's the change. And that's one of the issues that nobody wants to talk about. So the reality is there's no additional powers given to the Board of Representatives in this regard. The big change is that loophole where you can leave someone in there forever goes away. Second big issue is the proposed revision also clarifies the current resident electorate of the city. They had 8 positions that we've identified: Director of Public Safety, Police Chief, Assistant Police Chief, Fire Chief, Assistant Fire Chief, Director of Operations, Corporation Counsel, and the Personnel Director. And they try to make it seem as though if those people don't live here, no one else can be appointed. But it also says that if you aren't a resident of Stamford and you don't move here within 60 days, then 180 days, then the position becomes vacant. But with that said, they keep leaving out the most important part is, it says, notwithstanding this provision, under the proposed changes, the Board of Representatives may suspend this requirement by a majority vote of its entire body. So it's not going to eliminate someone from applying for the position, and it's not going to kick anyone out. Tim Shaw currently doesn't live here in Stamford. There's a specific waiver provision that says that anybody who's in their current position won't be affected one way or another. But the key is there is a waiver provision. Next big issue is the proposed charter changes allow the Board of Representatives to obtain legal services as necessary, as do other local legislative bodies in Connecticut. The Corporation Counsel currently is selected by the mayor, and his or her contract is approved by the Board of Representatives. The Corporation Counsel also serves at the pleasure of the mayor. But one of the really important things about that is it says specifically that the mayor can discharge the Corporation Counsel with or without cause. People bring up the fact that lawyers have an ethical duty to recuse themselves whenever there is a conflict. Fortunately, most of the time, the executive branch of our government, which is the mayor, they're not at odds with the legislative branch, which is the Board of Representatives. However, it does happen. And if this change is adopted, the Board of Representatives' ability to hire outside counsel would align more closely with legislative bodies across the state, including Hartford, New Haven, and Bridgeport. The other thing is the Board of Representatives for Stamford has a legal function that other municipal legislations don't have. It can review and potentially overturn zoning decisions. And under the city current charter, landowners have limited time to file a petition against a decision, and the Board of Representatives has limited time to act. In those cases, the city representative needs counsel quickly, but retaining outside counsel under the city's purchasing rules could take months. The charter currently requires the city's corporation counsel, who's nominated by the mayor and confirmed by the Board of Representatives, to advise all board. And it allows the 40-member Board of Representatives to hire independent counsel for specific cases and controversy if at least 31 members vote in favor of doing so. But what it does, council, you have to go through extraordinary steps. You have to have the majority leader, the minority leader, and the clerk and the president all agree. So if any one of those people says no, it's knocked out. Then people say, well, it's going to be too costly. And they came up with the $250,000 figure. But in the language for the charter, it says the cost of this position can be no more than the cost of a deputy corporation counsel. And if this position were to receive a top salary of $250,000, and that includes both the salary and the benefits, it would constitute 0.38% of the city budget. Moreover, some of the costs can be offset by the potential savings because the people in the legal department would not have to do work for the Board of Reps. The other thing is people don't take into consideration is right now, corporation counsel for the budget for this next upcoming fiscal year, they have an outside counsel budget of $1.1 million, which is a third of their total budget. The other big issue in the charter is the proposed change would create a new charter boards and commission to promote the goals of Americans with disability, mental health, housing, and harbor management. And based on feedback from citizens, the commissioners believe that our city will be best served if we have a housing commissioner, a mental health commission, and an ADA/DEI commission. And the reality is the ADA position for the city of Stamford for at least the last decade has been basically an afterthought. They've given individuals who have another full-time job of $5,000 to perform this function, and they haven't given all the training necessary to do these jobs. The proposed charter clarifies definitions and makes more understandable certain common terms in the charter. Additionally, the proposed charter changes reorganizes the budget process to permit residents to voice their opinions and concerns in a pre-budget public hearing, requiring publication of a budget calendar and ensures compliance with state law. Finally, the proposed charter change requires clear reporting and accountability for the legislative, legal, and fiscal matters.
Thank you, Barry and Tom and Clement. So I'm Nina Sherwood. I'm the majority leader on the Board of Representatives. I want to just say Commissioner Jackie Pioli texted me while I was sitting up here, and she wants to be here, but she's homesick and is watching virtually. Are there people watching virtually, Stephanie?
34 people.
34 people. Fantastic. Hello, 34 people. I want to thank the Stamford Police Department for the use of this building and for the taxpayers of the city of Stamford to pay for this, the construction of this building. And actually, I think the state of Connecticut to some extent. And I most of all want to thank all of you who came out of your homes tonight and are here to listen to what I think will be a very informative, substantive discussion about something that is probably the most important thing that we consider in our city, and that is the construction of our city constitution. The vote on the charter and any charter revision is the most democratic thing we do as a city and as a people. So I want to thank everybody who came out, and I also want to thank everybody who's listening online. And I also want to throw a special shout out to Stephanie, who's crouching over here taking this video for the people watching at home. So it's no secret to most of you, I am a fervent believer in this charter revision. I have been since the very beginning, because I think that the 15 members of the Charter Revision Commission and I believe the 26 members of the Board of Representatives who voted in favor of it displayed a tremendous amount of courage. This city has had some problems for a very long time, not just a few years, but a number of decades. And there has been charter revision commissions over the past 20 or 30 years that have not addressed the systemic issues that our city faces. And these 15 brave individuals, one sitting next to me and the others that are in the crowd, and the others that are watching on virtually on Facebook and on YouTube, had the courage to look at the real issues that the people of this city face and try to address them. And I will say that in the past charter revision commissions have been filled with people who are very well connected to city government and to the status quo. And this charter revision commission was incredibly diverse and included people from all walks of life, and all socioeconomic classes. And that's why honestly, that's why the Board of Reps is a really special place, because I think it's one of the only places in the city where you can find people from all income levels actually representing the people of the city. So I think that that's important. So I want to thank the commission, obviously, for that, and the Board of Representatives. So I'm holding a mailer in my hand. This is a mailer that was sent out by the Yes Crew. I don't think everybody got it yet. I can attest that it was sent to 20,000 households in the city. It is a color mailer. It's nice and shiny, and it's 6 inches. It's a 6x9. Okay, you guys are like, why do you care? Well, I can tell you that bulk postage, this costs close to $14,000, I think, to send to 20,000 people. This is the largest size that you can mail without a significant increase in the amount it costs for postage. I am going to hold up, and I think I threw some of them out, but you're probably not gonna be able to see my face. We can hold them up. Here we go. So there are, wait, 1, 2, I did not include the one from the Democratic City Committee because I know that comes from a different fund, but there is a lot of mail, very large, okay, telling you to vote no. I can attest that the people who are representing vote yes have raised, I think, between $35,000 and $40,000 approximately. I didn't look at the filing. But this mailer, and this is one of the smaller ones. This is like, I mean, this is something I dream about having the money to send during a campaign. I've run like 30 campaigns in the city of Stamford. This is like a $25,000, $30,000 mailer. These are more than that. I'm not going to belabor this issue, but the problem here is that there is money at stake. And when there's money at stake, people will do a lot to protect their money and their power. Okay? The charter revision that is before the people of the city of Stamford on Tuesday is not a massive charter revision. Yes, there are changes in a lot of sections of the charter. There are changes that open up city processes to the residents. Okay, so yes, there's sentences here and there that require a public hearing or require outreach or change the language of the charter so that it is something that regular people like you and me can read without having to be a lawyer. The Charter Revision Commission went from the top to the bottom of that document, and they created something that is accessible and that opens the door for the residents of the city to have influence over their government in ways that you do not have now. Okay? The problem with opening up city government to the influence of regular people like us is that you threaten a power system that has benefited for decades off of the way things are right now. If you go, I think BLT, the largest landowner in the city. I think they've originally owned 66 acres of the south end, but have continuously grown their portfolio in the south end. I think they're close to 100 acres. I think they're between 90 and 100 acres. Okay. They are buying properties. I'm just being real with people. Okay. They're buying properties that are zoned at multifamily or high density multifamily. They're putting them together into big blocks. They're pushing people out of their homes that have lived here for generations. Okay. And they're going to the zoning board and they're going to the planning board, and those 10 members of those two bodies, the 10 regular members of those two bodies, are the deciders as to whether or not they are just going to be able to build what is there in the master plan right now, which is like, for example, high density multifamily, which is, I don't know, maybe 6 to 10 units, something like that. They're going to apply, and have been for years, to get 162 units per acre. That's the highest zoning in the city. The only way you can get approval for that is if the members of the zoning and the planning board vote to say yes to those applications. The planning and the zoning boards of the city have a tremendous amount of power. I would argue they're more powerful than me. I would argue they're more powerful than the entirety of the Board of Representatives. I would also argue that in your everyday life, what we do with our land might be even more powerful than the mayor's office. Okay? So those 10 people really need to represent what the people of the city want. And there is a huge loophole there. Okay? There's a huge loophole. And getting back to this, the money, okay? If you are a big developer in the city and you already have relationships and already are able to get yes votes out of the current planning and zoning boards, you don't want a single thing to change. And if you're making tens of millions of dollars every month on rents, spending $200,000, $300,000 on making sure that system doesn't change is like it's like, for me, that's like dropping a nickel out of my pocket. Okay? So this charter revision is bigger than just the appointments process. But the reason I'm talking about it, and I'm eager to answer your questions about any section of this charter revision, the reason I'm talking about it is because it has to be addressed. Why is this discussion so lopsided? And everybody knows that everything's run by money. This is about money. It's about money. And I know that sounds hyperbolic, and there's a lot of people who dislike me are going to say, look, there she goes. She's just saying all these things that are not true. There's no way. I think this is more mail than what anybody got for the mayor's race. I mean, this is directly about money. So, I am happy to answer any questions. I hope we can get questions from online viewers too. But I really hope the people of Stamford do not just read what they're getting in the mail or follow along with what somebody said at their place of worship or what some non-for-profit organization said, because there is a lot of connections to power and money in the city. There has been for many years. So I firmly believe, and I'll end with this, that this charter revision, at least, is the first time in my lifetime, I was born in the 80s, that the residents of the city actually have a chance at really taking a step towards having themselves be better represented and having a voice in town hall. So I am firmly in the yes camp. I know there's people here who are in the no camp. I respect you. I welcome you. I hope that you come and take a seat next to me. And I would love to have, and I believe that Barry, the Neighborhood Coalition, I'm sure Clement wouldn't mind, if anybody who is on the no side of this would like to come and take a seat next to Clement and I and have a microphone and speak your side, I believe you are deserved to be heard. It is unfortunate that nobody is here from the no side, but it is what it is. I think that speaks for itself. Wait, one more thing. It's important to know that the people who paid for the PAC, who paid for all of these mailers, did not disclose where they got their money. The filing was due Tuesday night. I'm barely sleeping these days, so I can't remember what, this is Thursday, so it's due
10:31.
Tuesday night. And it is not public information at this time. And I hope that it is public by Tuesday, but I don't have high hopes. Because if I were them, I probably wouldn't want to show who spent all this money on something that gives people of the city more power to be involved in their city government. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Any questions, Mr. Farzia?
Yes, I brought copies of these flyers also. I know some of these people, unfortunately. Anyway, since Nina mentioned the fact that they have failed to file according to state statutes, okay? Now, if I go down to the town clerk's office in Stamford, I will not be able to find out where the money came from. Is that right?
No, you can find out where the SPAC, where the money came from.
Okay. I could-
And for the record, it's Board of Rep, it's mostly Board of Reps members and commission members.
And if the filing you said was not done as of Tuesday, whatever, what's the fine? $1,000?
$100 US.
So they spent all this money, they could afford it, $100, right?
But I do want to say, Mr. Target, thank you for your question, and I don't know if you have anything you want to say. I do want to say for the record, the people on the front of this card are not bad people, okay? They're people who have dedicated countless hours of their lives into doing what they feel is best for the city. But it's important to note that there's a lot of influence and power in the city. For the record, I've spoken to people who have signed on to the back of this, and a number of them have admitted to me that they have not even read the charter revision. They were just called by somebody and said, hey, everybody else is doing it. We really need you to sign on to this. Okay, and also the charter revision is not 195 pages. They picked the pages, they picked the revision that have an immense amount of footnotes in it so that people could track where the changes are from. If you look at the charter revision without the footnotes, it's actually 127 pages for the record. That's all.
Yes, Kendra?
For the record, I am an endorsed candidate by the Democrat City Committee, and I, yes, am a vote yes person. I know that literature had come out, I think yesterday or day before, and it had my picture on it. And I just want to state for the record that I am a vote yes for a smarter charter.
Coming in the back, we get your name, please?
Joe Franceschi. Specifically, why does the mayor oppose the charter? What political or legal justification does she give for that position?
So, unlike the vote no people who say that they know that all the people on the commission and they know that we were all anti-development, I don't pretend to read minds. So I can't tell you why this mayor has done what she's done. But it's not just this mayor. Pavia did it, Martin did it, Malloy did it, Simmons has done it. What they do is they lead people on these boards and commissions that they can control. They don't want to open up the process so that the Board of Reps has a chance to review the records of the people who get put on these boards and commissions.
Well, what I'm asking is that what would they say? In other words, I am opposing this charter revision because I want to allow people to stay on commissions.
No, so they have, to this date, and I tried online, I mean, as far as I know, they have never addressed the issue directly. They have 4 or 5 talking points. So nobody has addressed that issue from the no side. If there's anybody on the no side that wants to.
I mean, I do recall one of the things that the mayor has said is that most of these issues can be addressed in the master plan. Like a lot of these things can be addressed in the master plan. Like at the last thing we were at, that was what somebody said.
And for some of those things that may or may not be true, but that avoids the crux of the problem, is that the people who are going to be choosing the master plan are on these indefinite positions, right?
So they, to this point, have not acknowledged a problem. If the mayor were here, based on, I can't speak for the mayor, but I have seen some presentations by some of the people who say no. A lot of it is vote no because it's all in one question. A lot of it is vote no because there wasn't enough public input, which that, I mean, I don't know that I need to spend all these things, but, the other one is vote no because it should have been next year, not this year. And so, look, as far as the question goes, you look at the other major municipalities in the state, New Haven and Norwalk, their charter revisions are this year. Okay, they are far more extensive than, I mean, ours are tweaks. The only reason this is such a big deal is because, again, I think it has to do with money, and this affects some of the money interest in the city directly by giving the residents of the city more accountability. But the charter revisions are tweaks. I mean, big changes to the charter that would have required multiple questions would be like, should the zoning board and the planning board be elected by the people of the city of Stamford, or like other municipalities? That's a major change, right? Like the appointments process that is being proposed in this charter revision takes us the current structure that we have and then says, if by 8 months the mayor doesn't act, then here's an entire legislative body that's accountable to the people that can also nominate. 8 months. I think other cities that have done this, so Hampton, Hartford, and New Haven, have also had this issue with mayors having people be held over, and they've addressed the issue by allowing their city legislatures at a certain point, if the mayor doesn't act, to be able to nominate. And you look at Norwalk and New Haven, their charter revisions are much wider scope. They change more, and their questions are actually like one sentence. In New Haven, I could read it, but it's literally like, do you agree with the charter revision set forth by the X commission? It's like, it's a yes or no question. It's one sentence. And the League of Women Voters approved that. And in New Haven and in Hartford, but here in Stamford, they're saying it's too much stuff for one question. So to answer your question, I don't know what the mayor would say if she were here and you asked about expired terms. Maybe something along the lines of that the Board of Representatives won't appoint my people. Which there's
I
an
just
answer
like
to that
to
too.
comment on very briefly on one thing. Number one, in the existing charter that we have, there is a proviso that says that somebody can serve for 6 months after their term expires. But the Corporation Counsel and the attorneys indicated that that was problematic because you just can't eliminate somebody from a board like a planning or zoning board because it would shut down the ability of the board to conduct business in a statutory manner. So it was determined that even though the charter said gave a 6-month provision for serving, we could not do that. So in practice, these people were staying on indefinitely. That's one of the things that they wanted to change. Now, I've been involved in zoning for all my life, and I graduated planning school in '74. The master plan is a very, very different document than the charter. The master plan states your goals and objectives in your development. It's voted and approved with municipal input, with citizen input, and it's approved by the planning board. And from that, all your regulations are promulgated to really implement the goals and objectives of the master plan and a series of balancing goals. The charter is your constitution. This gives the municipal boards the powers and the abilities to do the things they do. So I said I would refute if the mayor were here, because that's a very, very, they're two just very different kind of documents, very different kind of things, very different things to accomplish. Master plan, as I said, is an important document, but certainly it's not the equivalent of the charter. I'm sorry, who's next? Scott?
I can ask in the chat.
Hi. So my question is in regards to taxes.
What's your name, sir?
Sure. Hi, my name is Anton Mikhail, E-N-T-O-N. So although those flyers say that as a result of the charter revision, the taxes will go up, whether it's the added bureaucracy, commissioners, whatever you call it, how would you answer that?
I can tell you what.
Repeat the question.
Well, the question was, in the flyers, it says that if you vote yes, your taxes are gonna go up. That question was raised at Faith Tabernacle this past Sunday. One of the people who was there said that if you vote yes, they're gonna change the appointments process, and the people who are appointed are gonna stop development. None of the commissioners that I worked with was anti-development. And the only thing we were doing was saying, give people in the city of Stamford the ability to question when the development goes up. They would never stop it, because even if you have a different composition, and if they didn't have that proposal that the mayor put forth that would have stopped the petitioners from petitioning projects that weren't within 300 feet of their homes, the only thing that would have done was make it go in front of the board of reps. Wouldn't have stopped the project. But it was, and everyone that I've spoken to, all the commissioners says they weren't anti-development. They wanted smart development. They wanted the development to take into consideration what the people in the not only the neighborhood, but the city wanted. You go right up here to Bull's Head. That project's almost finished now, where you're gonna have Shake Shack, Pepe's Pizza, Starbucks, and a Whole Foods. Traffic is already bad there. It's gonna get worse. That's a fact. They say, well, we've done a traffic study. The last traffic study that was done in the city of Stamford was done in 2022. They don't really know what's gonna happen with that traffic. You've not heard anything about a traffic study being done. But those of you who are trying to go to North Stamford, if you turn off Washington Boulevard to try to get on Long Ridge, you may have to wait for 3 lights to make a left turn to go north. It can take you a half an hour to get down to the government center. And Bishop, I want to say his name is Mason or Morrison, who's on the board of reps. He made a good point. You can have people who live less than 15 miles from downtown, from the government center, live in Darien or Greenwich. They can get to the government center faster than I can get to the government center from North Stamford. That's absolutely a fact. But none of the things that the charter proposes would stop development. It may call for another review, and there's nothing in it that's going to raise your taxes. And what the person at the government, at the thing at Faith Tabernacle said is, the developers won't build here. The only thing I know of that they're not making more of is land. So if a developer wants to build something and they want to build it, Stamford is the closest place that you can get to New York City. It is a 47-minute train ride from Grand Central. There is no more land. So if they want to build, and it's clear that people want to move here, they can find a place to build it.
Do you want to say anything else? Somebody on here says that maybe that hiring a new lawyer for the Board of Reps might cost more than existing costs. I know you sort of addressed that, but also, I mean, they wouldn't be hiring a lawyer. I think that's
So,
right.
So it's a really good question, because I think that there's been a lot of messaging from the no side that says it's going to raise your taxes. It's important to note that the current Board of Representatives has voted by majority almost every year since at least I've been on the board to actually cut the budget in ways to make sure that the residents of the city don't feel as great of a tax increase. In fact, the current Board of Representatives negotiated with the Board of Finance and the Mayor's office to cut spending, I believe, by $5 million last year. The people who voted for this revision are actually dedicated to making sure that taxes don't rise. A lot of us campaigned on that, and we're following through. But to answer your question directly, and to answer the question that was asked about the lawyers. So in this charter revision, to be clear, and I have the section, I'm happy to read it. There are two ways that this charter revision changes how the Board of Representatives can access a lawyer. So currently, right now, if the Board of Representatives wants to hire a lawyer, and I can tell you there are many things that the Board of Representatives may need a lawyer for. If the board wants to hire somebody, the majority leader, the minority leader, the president, the clerk, and the clerk need to sponsor a resolution, and then 31 members of the 40-member body need to agree to it. That threshold is almost impossible to reach, okay? So what this revision does is it changes that threshold. It gets rid of the leadership having to have a say at all. It just says if 21 members of the Board of Representatives, which is a simple majority, believe that they need to hire outside counsel, they can. That is actually a higher threshold than most other municipal legislative bodies in the state, the majority. So currently, having to have 31 members agree is the highest threshold in the state for a legislative body to be able to access a lawyer, except for Bridgeport. And I can tell you that the Board of Representatives is responsible for checks and balances in the city, financial checks and balances. We look over every contract that gets signed. We have a duty to look at all of these things and all the things that go on in the departments in the city. You think 40 people are going to be able to do that without any access to a non-biased lawyer? You're not going to get checks and balances that way. And so the other thing it does, and sorry, Clement, the other thing it does is that it allows the Board of Representatives, if the board votes by majority, it allows the Board of Representatives to hire a lawyer to be the lawyer of the Board of Reps, but the Board of Reps would not be able, by a cap in the language, the Board of Reps would not be able to exceed what one of the mayor's lawyers, assistant lawyers gets paid. The mayor has 10 assistant lawyers and 1 corporation counsel lawyer.
No, deputies.
So deputy, so I call assistant, sorry, it's a deputy. And with any benefits, if they were paid at the top rate, that'd be $250,000. And our budget is $650 million at this point. And so would it increase your taxes if we hired a lawyer? I mean, you can make that argument up until a point because there's a cap, but you would also be giving the legislative body, the oversight body in the city, more of an ability to have accountability, look over city contracts, make sure that we're getting the best deal. So I would actually argue that it would save money and government would be more transparent. And the city's lawyers would not have to come to our meetings, 6-hour meetings at night. We would have somebody else if the board decided to do that. So I think it's either no tax increase, in my opinion, or you might be even saving money.
And I just have one more point on that. I actually went back and looked at what the city has been spending, and not to malign the people on the Board of Reps or the Board of Finance, but in the 2021 budget, they approved a budget for outside counsel for the legal department of $625,000. But after they got the audited financials, they spent $1.1 million. So they spent over almost $600,000 more than the approved budget.
On top of the people we already paid.
On top of the people that you already paid. In 2022, they did the same thing. They spent in 2022 for that fiscal year, they approved a budget, the 21-22 budget. They approved a budget for outside attorneys of $900,000. Once they got the audited financials, they had spent $1,250,000. This year, for this budget season, this just passed 2023, they budgeted $893,000. I called the board, I called a number of times to try to get what the actual spend was. Nobody's been able to produce it. But I got a feeling when it comes out, it's going to be higher than the $893,000.
Chris wants to ask a follow-up online. Chris Butler says, is there any risk of conflicting legal opinions with the Board of Reps lawyers and the city council, thus making it easier for someone to sue the city due to conflicting legal opinions? Could this represent an additional legal cost for the city if that happens, or is that likely to happen?
I'm a lawyer. Lawyers will sue anybody. That's just a reality. But the other reality is the person that told the Board of Reps in the last charter review, Mr. Lombardo was there, that they could not have a residency requirement, worked for the corporation council. And that person in the opinion said, you can't do that, it doesn't work. When we, the commission, got its own lawyer, we looked at the language, and I'll be honest, I looked at the language and I said, they're missing a piece. And JR is going to be able to give you some more pointers on this. What it actually says is that if the person is on the pay plan, you can have a residency requirement. And JR, I'm going to put you on the spot because I know you know the two sections that deal with the residency requirement.
So the language that's in the charter today basically says that if somebody is hired under the civil service rules of the charter, which are in chapters 11 and 47, that you can't have a residency requirement. But all of the mayor's appointees are actually hired under the general provisions of the charter, which is a different set of provisions. And it specifically refers to civil service. So civil service are the people like the police department, the firemen, the people that are working for the unions. Basically the people that work for the city, whether they're working for this mayor or the next mayor, the people that float across administrations. The residency requirement in the charter actually just applies to the people that the mayor appoints in the general provisions. And by the way, the commission didn't even think all of those people needed to be residents. We pared that down from about 20 to 8. And it was the 8 public safety people that you sort of want in town when there's an emergency. You don't want your police chief stuck in New York City because that's where they live. But we also recognize that there are some circumstances where we want somebody, like our current police chief has worked in Stamford. He knows Stamford. And so he probably would have gotten a waiver if it was requested. If we had a police chief that came from someplace else that had no real familiarity with the city, we might not provide the waiver. So, but it allows for it. But again, the reality is when we got this decision in 2015, the Board of Reps didn't have an attorney to go to because the only attorney that we had available was telling us this is the way it is. And that's one of the problems with the Board of Reps not having independent, unbiased counsel available.
I think, and I want to get obviously the other questions, but I think what Mr. Butler on, I guess, Facebook or YouTube is saying that he's concerned that if the Board of Reps does something that their council tells them to, that the mayor may sue, or if the mayor does something that the Board of Reps council says that's bad, that the Board of Reps might sue the mayor. Look, I don't think that that's what's going to happen. It's not what happens in other municipalities where their legislative bodies have access. I mean, every other legislative body in the state has more access than the Board of Representatives of Stamford. So I don't think that that's going to happen. And what I'll say is this, is that I think it keeps both sides honest. Because right now you have a situation where the mayor's lawyer or corporation counsel is coming to the Board of Reps and saying, you can't do this or you can't do that. And I know for a fact, and actually everybody in this room knows, because on my first term, we were told by the previous mayor's lawyer, we were told You cannot overturn the zoning decisions. You don't have enough signatures. That case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and you know what the Supreme Court said? You had the signatures. So our council was not giving us good advice. And if we had gotten the proper advice in the beginning, there's a good chance that we wouldn't have had to go all the way to the Supreme Court, which would have saved you money. So, you know, I don't, you know, another example, the Board of Representatives overturned an application by the city's Land Use Bureau. The city's Land Use Bureau applied to change zoning. The zoning board approved it. And then the residents of the city petitioned and asked the Board of Representatives to overturn that zoning decision. The mayor's lawyer and the administration did not come and sue the Board of Representatives because we're not going to sue each other. I mean, even though I disagree oftentimes with the mayor, I'm not trying to sue the city and cost you guys money. We just really need to have a system of checks and balances that works, not for me, for you.
Yeah. But, yeah.
There's a gentleman in the back that wants to ask a question. Would you? Yes.
Nina, you touched on, my name's Lori Deutsch.
Right.
Earlier, you touched on the, everything being in one question. And that seems to be a bone of contention for a lot of people. So could you please address that and clear the air?
So the Board of Representatives were given a lengthy document, which I think I also have here, that goes over 3 different ways the state of Connecticut presents charter changes on the ballot. Okay, the first is a simple question. I'm actually going to read an example of it because I think it's important. So I'm going to read New Haven's question. So this is the first type of question. Shall the charter changes as recommended by the Charter Revision Commission and adopted by the Board of Alders be approved and adopted? That's what the residents of New Haven have, that one sentence. There's no information about what the changes are. It just says, do you agree with their recommendation, yes or no? Again, I'll note that their changes are far more extensive and detailed than ours. So that was option 1 for the Board of Reps. Option 2 would have been to go with multiple questions. And people who are on the no side bring up the fact that the last, I think, 2 charter revisions, there were 2 or 3 questions on the ballot in Stamford. And then the third option was an omnibus question, which is a single question that encapsulates and describes the changes, right? And so it's important to note that there is no single question that you could get on a piece of paper that can describe an entire change accurately. So the Board of Representatives had to decide between those 3 things. We felt that having one question that didn't describe anything was not a fair way to go. We wanted to give voters as much information as possible. But we were also advised by one of the best, I would call the best charter revision lawyer in the state. He's certainly the most experienced in terms of large cities. He advised us that if we went the route of having 8 or 9 questions or 10 questions, people are not, they're going to be exhausted by it. To get through 9 questions on a ballot is, people feel overwhelmed by that. And the Board of Reps looked at it and said, every single thing that was done in this charter revision has to do with 3 things: transparency, accountability, and democracy. Every single one of those 9 things that are listed in that question have to do with either or all 3: transparency, accountability, and democracy. And so if you were living in a cave and weren't receiving all of this, and you looked at that question and you looked at the charter revision, maybe you had a lot of time and you wanted to read 127 pages. I firmly believe in my heart that the residents of the city would be like, of course I'm in favor of a public hearing before the budget season starts. Of course I'm in favor of defining terms. Of course I'm in favor of a housing commission. Why wouldn't I be in favor of making the the budgetary process easier for regular residents to read. Why wouldn't I be in favor of making sure that this loophole with the appointments process is fixed? Why would I not, why don't I want my representatives to have access to legal counsel? All of these things are really common sense. The only reason this is contentious, and I know I sound crazy, it has to do with money. There's no other way to interpret it because all of these things are very similar, and I think the residents of the city would be highly in favor of all of them. They're not controversial. So that was the thinking behind the Board of Representatives and that vote.
I just wanted to say that, getting back to the, the taxes part of it is the yes people are saying, you know, our taxes aren't going to go up. And I'm for the yes people. The no says that they're going to be going up because of this whole charter revision thing. But we have to get real here, people. Our taxes are going to go up whether or not we vote yes or no. They go up every single year. This past year, we had the, what do they call it? The reevaluation. Yes, thank you. Not only did we have the reevaluation that was split in two, we also had a tax increase. So we paid half this year. And guess what? We're going to be paying half next year as well. The only time our taxes never went up that one year was during COVID because everybody got laid off. So let's call a spade here. The taxes are going to go up. And that's the bottom line. It's just going to happen. No matter where you vote or what you do.
But more transparency could give us the potential to save money, maybe, right?
Is there anybody online?
Yeah, we have another question online, and it is from, hold on, it's back a little bit. But it was a good question. It's from Carrie Saphir, and she wants to know, does the change to the charter strengthen our ability, and by our, I'm assuming she means like the public's ability, to affect the master plan when it comes to the decision for making new commercial development and other things that are in that plan?
It doesn't do anything with respect to the master plan because that's.
Well, because the planning board.
Well, the planning, you could have different commissioners on the planning board, but in and of itself, the changes that we recommend don't do that. What it does do is it allows the Board of Representatives to consider other people to be on these various boards and commissions.
So, I'm not going to disagree with Clement, but so it doesn't directly change the master plan. But what this does is directly, and this is what this whole thing is about, who sits on the planning board is going to be the final decider on the master plan. And so you currently have, if this fails on Tuesday, the next 10 years of this city's land use decisions, in terms of the master plan, what people are allowed to build and use land for as of right in the city are going to be decided by 5 members of the planning board that are expired, not by a year, not by 3 years. So some of them are expired by 4 or 5 years. One of them was voted off of the board in 2019 by the Board of Representatives and is still sitting there making decisions for you. So if I don't have a crystal ball, but I'd be willing to put every dollar in my bank account, which by the way is not a lot, because I'm just a working class person here. I'm willing to bet you that the people writing the master plan, if this fails, are going to be 5 people who are expired and have never come. They did years ago, but are not coming in a public forum to discuss how they vote. And I can tell you that most of the time they are voting yes to whatever large developers in the city want. I'm not against development. We need, my opinion, purely my opinion, we need people on the planning and the zoning board who care about what we care about in our communities, that we understand that we need to grow in a way that enhances our communities.
Right.
And increases our quality of life, not decreases our quality of life. Okay, so Yes, I think it does, because if this fails, the people on the planning board that are currently there are going to be the ones that are making those decisions. And if it passes, maybe some of them are still going to be on the planning board. I'm not saying the board of reps will reject all of them, any of them. But you deserve to have a public discussion about whether or not they serve another 3 years and make a decision for you for the next 10 years of our master plan. That's why you should vote yes.
Hi, my name's Susan Bucksbaum. I want to address something in the revision that was brought up, Mental Health Commission. That's so important. I've been a mental health advocate for 35 years. Stamford is a city of what, about 135,000 people. Inpatient units on at Norwalk Hospital and Silver Hill are now closed. We need to address mental health in our community. 1 in 4 people in this country have a mental illness, and it's gotten worse since the start of the pandemic. We need to address it in our schools. We need to address it in the programs we offer. We need to address it in housing, all aspects of mental health care. People who have psychiatric disabilities, people who are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act are tired of being swept in the closet and ignored.
Say it.
It's time. It's time.
Yeah. Well, why don't we do like another, if you have, oh, sorry, did you want to say something?
Well said. If we want to be an all-inclusive city, we have to recognize that that's where we want to spend the money. And what the people of the charter did is they said, this is what the people told us they wanted. And that's why we put it in the charter.
Can I just ask you, first of all, commissions.
State your name, Karen.
Commissions don't cost money. Karen Cambrelli. Commissions don't cost money. They come from, the community. They are volunteers. The Mental Health Commission could actually bring funds to Stamford by pulling down grants from the federal government and also grants from the state. There is a lot of money right now out there for mental health, and we are not grabbing any of it. And something like that could actually reduce taxes as well, because if you're getting grants and you're getting funding from the federal government, we could apply that to counselors that are in schools and things like that, extra help for students that right now is coming out of our regular taxes to fund our school counselors.
Any questions?
Joe Card, you have a follow-up. Listen, I've lived in Stamford since 1956. I came as a young person from Italy, okay? Where they know how to make pizza. Anyway, the bottom line is, what we have today in our government, by the way, I served on the Board of Finance for 2.5 decades. What we have in our city government today is not working. Let's be honest about it. It's not working, okay? This is a no-brainer. Say yes, because the change will improve the democratic process in our city, okay? So I say yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I have some more coming online. So first of all, people want to let you know that you just sound like you're want a lot of power and you're anti-development. So I wanted to forward that.
Also a basement dwelling. I'm couch surfer in my parents' house. Yeah. Thank you.
Another thing that they were wondering about is, why is it happening on this year? Like, a lot of people are saying that they haven't had time to get information. They don't they're not sure what these 9 questions mean. You know, we have lower voter turnout on these years versus, I'm trying to read word for word what the comments are, you know, try to, in good faith, give them to you guys.
The turnout in this election, based on historical data, says that for a local election, you have roughly 20% of the electorate turnout. In a gubernatorial election, which was what we had 2 years ago, the turnout was roughly 63%. When the current mayor was elected, she was elected when there was only a 41% turnout. She won by 1,500 votes. People know that we had the last charter revision in 2013. You have to do it at least every 10 years, which is this year. That's by state statute. The fact that they're saying, well, just push it over another year, then if people are so concerned about only having the elections when you're going to have the most turnout, then I, for one, don't want to elect the mayor unless it's a presidential year. So I'm saying that if it's good for that, it's got to be good for the mayor. She only was elected by 41%.
So, to piggyback off of what Commissioner Williams is saying, you know, it's a valid question, and it's something that the Board of Representatives considered, but the Board of Representatives only considered it late in the game because look, the Board of Representatives didn't initiate charter revision. We had to do it. Our legislative secretary came to the president of the board and said, you're starting charter revision and this is the schedule for it. That schedule from the beginning was for this year, okay? The only reason that the state would allow us to have pushed it off to next year, because this process is all, there's a whole calendar. The state is very on top of the charter revisions to make sure that they're following a certain time frame. So the only reason that next year was even an option, and the members of the commission can attest to this, was that the mayor's lawyer held up the commission by 8 months and stopped the commission from being able to get a lawyer. Okay? If that didn't happen, the only time that the state would have allowed this city to have this charter revision on the ballot would have been this year. That's number one. Number two, if you, whoever asked the question, members of the public, if you are confused now about this charter revision, how do you think on earth you would have the time to figure out a local municipal charter? When I've knocked doors for this, and there's no shame to people because I was in the same boat. People think that this is about a charter school. Do you think during a presidential election when people are glued to CNN and MSNBC and Fox News and everything else, do you think that they're going to want to hear about an appointments process? I mean, if you want to have a fair discussion about this, the Board of Representatives said, let the charter revision be the focal point this year. That alone will bring people out. The opportunity to engage in their city government will bring people out. I have faith in the city that you care and that you're engaged. And I don't think we had to wait 12 months. And I don't think the Board of Representatives felt that we had to wait 12 months to make sure that we close loopholes that massive corporations, multi-billion-dollar corporations, are exploiting in the city and have been for decades. Why would we wait? Why? So that's my stance, that many members of the Board of Representatives felt that way.
You know, and one other point, if you look at the numbers of mailers that have gone out, people know what's on the ballot this time because the mailers that have gone out just from the no side. And if you look at the signs around the city, you see them everywhere. Next year, any local issue is going to be an afterthought.
mention, I wasn't going to jump in here, but we're the 19th Charter Revision Commission. We wrapped up business when we turned our items over to the Board of Reps. If the 10 members who are here now decided they wanted to sit and meet and chat in the ante room here, there's no public involvement because we don't exist as a Charter Revision Commission anymore. But the last one, the 18th, followed the 17th, 1 year and then the next year because there was still unfinished business. So the city has done that in the past, and it was an unusual thing, but it was based on the fact that there were some items that weren't picked up, and it had not been for the diligence of the 10 people sitting here and the 5 who aren't here on the commission, and the nudging that we had from the Board of Reps that you have to get this done, and most particularly by council, you have to have it done, and it has to be turned over by this date, or the whole thing is for naught. So that's a very important thing to remember, that we had to get it done. The 8 months that we were delayed because the former corporation counsel decided he was going to name counsel, and as an independent commission, he had no authority under state law. He had no authority really anywhere to do that, and it was a lot of tug of war. Karen was on the selection committee with me. Michael Cacase was one of the people selected on the committee to decide on the council to obtain. Joe Capalbo and Jay Sandak. So we had 2 former corporation counsel, and we had 1 former chair of the, as Michael says, the failed 13th Charter Revision Commission that went down the tubes because it was on an April standalone referendum. Michael and I go back to pre-kindergarten days, and I think it's always something that he's been troubled about. And Marty knew him before that. So, thank you.
Are there any questions that you have?
There's a couple people here. We'll go here and then come back.
Let me just go to Sean Bozier.
Hello. For those of you who don't know, most of you know who I am. Sean Boger. I'm on the Board of Representatives, District 15. I know there was discussion earlier about the filing for the PAC and everything like that, and I think it's an important issue. You should know where the money's coming from that is being used to bombard you with stuff. I know that Yes PAC filed theirs in a timely fashion. I know that I contributed money to it. You could see it. I contributed $2,000. That's how strongly I felt. Trust me, I don't really have $2,000 to part with, but that's how strongly I felt about it. However, I did just learn while we're in the meeting that the No PAC did file. They filed that the data should be available tomorrow. However, what I will share that I confirmed with the town clerk's office is that supposedly they're claiming on their paperwork that they've only raised $100,000 up to this point, which if you look at the sheer amount of those mailers that are coming through, and I know from personal experience from being involved in other campaigns myself having to run, that the quantity and quality of those mailers to me, in addition to the postage, would far exceed that. Now I've been a treasurer for campaigns too, and you have to file once the bill comes in. If the bill's not paid, there's a special way to report it. This is an unpaid bill. But to claim that there's only $100,000 that's come in, when clearly to me, and I'm going to be conservative, that it looks like there's about $250,000 that have been spent on mailers, concerns me. And I'm not saying that they did anything wrong, but I'm saying that the transparency of who's spending the money isn't right. And I will firmly stand here right now. I take issue with the fact that I see the same exact 8-foot big red signs down in the south end on BLT property, and I see those same signs out there in the community, and it makes me wonder who is putting the money behind this. It makes me think that they're putting a lot of the money behind that, and I think we're entitled to know that. You know, our boatyard was taken from us many, many years ago, and we still, that entity has still not been held to account for that. And now they're bombarding us with pamphlets to convince us as residents to vote a certain way. And I don't agree with it. I think it should be completely out in the open. If they're going to stand there and say that it's only $100,000, I would be concerned. I don't know how you feel, but I would be concerned. I don't have a question. That's the only point I wanted to. Thank you.
I'm really happy that I came here tonight because about 2 weeks ago I was over at Bethel AME, and I remember I heard our mayor stating that with the ballot questions, it's in violation of something with the Connecticut state. I don't remember, but I kept hearing the word violation. Secondly, every 10 years, so we are at the 10th year this year. So for the record, the way that the opposers to the vote yes, they keep saying, oh, why don't we put it for the next election? But for the record, it must be done this year. This is the 10th year. And I have a question regarding our audit. The audit's not complete. I've been reading, our audit is not complete. And I guess it's about time to start another audit. And the charter, I know we're asking for more transparency and accountability, but will the changes affect how the audits will be prepared and will they be submitted on time?
Is that related to the budget at all? Somebody has a question about the budget process and having more public input for the budget process. So I think those two things are.
I spoke to the person who's over the systems of the city. He said the reason that we don't have audited financials is because they're having trouble getting the systems up and running. The charter has nothing to do with affecting how they're doing the system. The city has not put in a system that they can get the information out of. So that's why they can't close the books. They didn't close the books for 22-23, and they don't have the system up and running for the 23-24 year. So it's not a charter issue, that's just a city issue. They haven't been able to work the system.
Not a violation of state statute?
Yes, it will be, because the state will come in at some point and they could potentially fine the city.
So is it better that it's kind of late so they can, I just have one ring on. Is it better that it's kind of late so when certain things come up, you can put it here, hide it here, or something like that?
That I couldn't tell you. The only thing I can tell you is I spoke to the person who's over it literally today, and he told me via email that they're just having problems getting the system to work.
The fact that the audit is late has nothing to do with the charter. But it's important to note that this charter revision will force the city government to disclose how it spent money at the end of the fiscal year. So like right now, you can go online and you can look at the budget for last year's fiscal year, and you could see that we collected whatever it was, $630 something million, and how every department was scheduled to spend that money. You can see that for the Board of Education as well. What you cannot see right now, unless you FOIA request it, it could take you months to get a response, is how the city actually spent the money. So the budget is before we spend the money. At the end of the fiscal year, there are reports that the city makes as we have to file an audit, the Board of Education as well, and the city side of things, including the legal department, on how we actually spent the money. Right now, a regular citizen in the city can't go online and see how we spent every dollar in last year's fiscal year. If this charter revision passes, it will require the city government to put those documents online and make them accessible at the government center. Okay, this is not whatever the talking point is, whatever it is, more bureaucracy. That's not more bureaucracy. That's just taking a document that we already have and putting it in a place that everybody in the city who pays taxes and who calls this place a home can look at. That's common sense. Other cities in the state do that. We don't require it. This requires it. And you know what that brings? People are like, oh, who cares? They already have those documents, whatever. If you are the mayor of the city and you know that how you spend the money at the end of the year is going to be public for the Advocate or any newspaper or anybody to look at, you're going to think about how you spend it. Not talking about this, Mayor, I'm just talking in general. If you know that someone can see you, you're more likely to do the right thing. So that's what we should require of our government. $650 million from the people of the city is a lot of money. You deserve to know how it was spent.
The other thing it does is one of the provisions they talk about it creating bureaucracy. What it does is it creates a calendar and it tells you which date they're supposed to have which documents online. And if they had had that 2 years ago, maybe we wouldn't be in a situation now where we don't have audited financials. Because right now, there's nothing that says when they have to have it available.
Yes, but the Board of Finance hires the auditors, so the Board of Finance is asleep at the switch. Okay? They need to hold the auditors accountable. They pay.
Well, the auditors, and I'm not trying to defend either one, the auditors are saying they can't finish their work because the city can't provide them with the information. Because the city actually is using 2 different accounting software packages right now. One is called HTE, the other one is called something else, and they can't get them to work together.
But they're paying the bill.
They are paying, well, allegedly.
The only one was the budget.
We're also trying to.
And we're also trying to make it accessible for people to see budget to actual during the year so that we don't have to wait to the end of the year to see how close we are to what we've budgeted.
And that's a really important point, because when I was reading to you about the discrepancies in terms of what had been spent, what was budgeted, and then what was spent by the legal department for outside counsel, they wouldn't have had to wait until the end of the year to find that out. They would have known much earlier that they're going way over budget, because that would have been in the calendar that Ms. Michelson was talking about.
Are there any other questions from Cynthia?
I want to look at the charter as a quality of life instrument. It is the constitution for the city of Stamford. If you look at urban development from 1960 to present, it seems that low to moderate income folks in the city are being taken for granted and forgotten in terms of what they bring, whether they're the janitor, the person that checks you out at the hospital, when you check in at the reception. We need to make sure that everyone in this city has equitable access to city services and information. And if you go to that land use bureau today and you present, it appears that this city only works for people who have high income, high assets, and a distinguishable address.
And good
I
lawyers.
think that the
And good
charter
lawyers.
and good lawyers. So I think that the work that the Charter Revision Commission did was to really make Stamford a city that truly works for everyone, regardless of where you live.
Can I make just a really quick comment? I know you guys can hear me talking, but, I just want to say, I want to go back to this issue and thinking and, this concept about the question's too long and it should have been, 9 different questions and it should be, next year. If you prescribe to that belief that it should have been next year and it should have been 9 questions, I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to close my eyes. And that's a lot of trust because I'm sitting up here and I also have stage fright, which most of you won't, but it's real. I'm going to close my eyes and imagine a ballot that has a president on it, has state, it has federal senators and representatives, state representatives, state senators, and then all the municipal seats. If you imagine that ballot, I'm going to open my eyes now. Do you remember when we vote for president, the ballot goes all the way across, right? So you're going to have that ballot. If you want to prescribe to that, if you think that the Board of Representatives should have made this decision, you're asking us to say, vote for all these things over here, then vote for 9 questions down here. You know what they would be saying a year from now? I'm confused and I can't figure it out. It's too much information and I need another year. That's what would be the talking points. And why is that? Because it's not about the question, it's not about the year. It is about the money and it is about changing like, we're talking about changing a tiny piece of our city government that would make it more accountable to you. That's scares and that's so scary. Because really the power in this city has always been with the people. It's always been with you, and the people of the city have a decision on Tuesday to take that power and be heard. It doesn't have to be next year. It doesn't have to be 9 questions. Okay? So I firmly believe that the no people, if we did everything they wanted us to do and presented it in 9 questions and there were lines out the door because people had to sit there and fill in bubbles, yes, no, whatever they're going to fill out when people are trying to vote in a presidential year, I still think they'd be a no. Because there's something else going on. And it's obvious. It's so obvious.
Isn't the master plan also like next year, or they'd be getting that together?
No,
Like we
that's
have
a
to get
different
that.
process.
Master
That's
plan.
starting.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. We got to get these boards and commissions like cleaned up before that process starts.
Are there any other questions or comments? One thing I'd like to add, maybe 2 things I'd like to add, because these are very almost esoteric, but to bring it down why these appointments are so important, and Marty's going to laugh. When I was on the zoning commission, I used to have my mantra that we don't make the projects fit the zoning, we make the zoning fit the projects. And it's exactly backwards. You can go through any zoning agenda and you'll see some text change generally, or a map change, or some change to the master plan. And that's almost routinely throughout. I served as the planning director for another major community here in Fairfield County. I served for just about a decade. I never had an applicant submit one text change. People generally build in accordance with the plan. Now, your master plan, which says your overall guide, that's where your zoning regulation should come from. When you do it the way we do it, master plan is almost a meaningless document because you're constantly changing what the goals of your master plan. I said, and we do it on a spot basis. One developer says, well, I think I should get 35 units acre here because the other guy got 24. And we saw this with with something called the Marshall property, which is where the Marshall truck company used to be. The applicant came in, had this big project. He said, well, I need to get this project at this zoning because this is the only way the numbers work. And look what you've done here, and look what you've done here. It was a DWD zone, and of course the zoning board passed it. These are practical reasons why you need folks in there and say, sometimes zone changes are good. We're a fast growing city. However, you want it to be in a context that relates to what's around it, to your community, your quality of life. I had a fellow who called me this morning. I was on for 20 minutes and had a lot of stuff to do with this. And he told me he's been here 2 years. He spent $2 million on a house. He's beside himself because they're going to put 500 units on Long Ridge Road behind him in his backyard. I said, he seems like it's a fait accompli. It's a done deal. He said, and the point I'm making is zoning is put through a protection as well as a zoning guide. What's the point of having zoning if you change it to fit the development? And as I said, not all zoning changes are necessarily bad, but it should be done in contact with your surrounding adjoining residential neighborhood. And everyone says, well, the master plan says we on these corporate parks, we should explore. I think the word in the master plan is explore use. And today, this individual said, well, he was talking with folks in the individual zoning department, and they said our goal is suburbanization of Long Ridge Road, not suburbanization, it's urbanization of Long Ridge Road. But these are decisions we should make because of the people we have on the boards, and that's why these decisions are so important in a very practical way. Because you don't have a chance. You go to a public hearing, you make your point, the zoning board makes its decision. That's what you need, and it's better balance. It's a balancing of interests. Because there's a lot of things you can pick out of the master plan and say, well, it says this and it says that. Yes, it does, and some of them are conflicting, but it's about balancing those objectives. The other point I want to make is about attorneys. And people say, well, it's a conflict of interest. But sometimes when you have two, And basically you do get a balance. I'm going to tell you a couple of examples. We had a situation in Rugby, was it Rugby Road, Rugby Street at the South End? We actually won a nuisance case for a rock crushing plant down at the South End. And this is a horrible, no one would want to live in this environment. It's horrible, it's dirty, it's dust, it's just a very environmentally unsound practice, rock crushing. And it's usually only allowed in relation to a construction project for a very short period of time. This individual had an ongoing operation. Our zoning enforcement officer took him to court. We won. It was an established nuisance. And the Corporation Council for the city, for some ungodly reason, comes in with a stipulated judgment so this guy can continue. Let me another example. When the boatyard, Looters was destroyed, there was an illegal permit. Well, that was a part of a development project. As part of a development plan, it's generally owned by one individual. And when you commit a violation, it basically stops anything else in that development plan. South End is an 80-acre development plan. Our Corporation Council came in with case law from a subdivision saying that you can't do that because there are different parcels in it. Yes, there are different parcels in it, but a subdivision, you can sell out individual areas. In the development plan, it's owned generally by one entity, or it could be a few entities, but you can close it down. Two different things. And I challenged them. And I challenged the Corporation Council at the time. And she said, well, she's not a land use attorney. And I said, well, maybe we should get one. Of course, they never got one. But in the meantime, we started granting all these approvals, and we accepted a major violations of our city. And I can go on and on to you, very practical stories. Okay, so we have a case now pending in court at the coalition having to do with a count. And we submitted a count in accordance with the Supreme Law, the way we should have. It was verified. We did the count. They told us we're 4 short. How could we be 4 short? Well, because it was in a trust, and the trust didn't have control of the property. So we said, we went around, we got it notarized that these people weren't entitled to sign these petitions. And the Corporation Council at the time, not the current one, said he's already made a ruling on it. And he said he's not accepting it. And by the way, the numbers we had were also validated by our town clerk. So you can see that sometimes there's a very specific agenda. We now have this case in court. We'll see what the judge does with it, or maybe some other technicalities. But this is the reason why sometimes just having oversight and somebody there is so important, because we're not always getting the best. I won't say we won't get the best decision, but we're getting a decision that suits the person who's hired the attorney, and that's what they're there to do. So, and another gimmick that they're doing is we'll ask Corporation Council for an opinion. Well, that's a way of popping out, really, and saying the Corporation Council's job is to represent you. And yes, you need their opinion sometimes, but basically you have competing interests in this town, and that has to be recognized. So having another attorney or another set of eyes or another set sometimes keeps the other one honest, and is really in the best interest. As I said, those people on Rugby Street, my heart broke for them. Really.
Thank you, Barry.
Anyway.
Yes, so a couple people online just wanted to clarify that, Barry, you run the coalition and your better half was on the commission,
Actually, yes.
right?
There's no question. It's full disclosure. I mentioned that earlier, I believe, that my wife was on it and yes, I was, I'm one of the principals on the coalition. And when I opened up, I identified myself from the very, very beginning. We're the sponsors of this. And just for those people that may have tuned in late, I've been since October 13th in touch with the mayor's office repeatedly. I'll say repeatedly, to try to get her here or her representatives. And I was always put on hold, or we'll get back. She has a conflict. And then today I got a call from one of the individual officers. The mayor's not coming and we have nobody to send. I said, with all your assistants, there's nobody you can send? No, I said, anyone else on your team? No. So this is the way it is, but we have tried. Go ahead.
Did you want to say something? They also wanted to know about affordable housing online, which we have talked about a little bit in passing, but nothing directly. So I don't know, do you want to speak to affordable housing?
I'm happy to speak So, the charter revision creates, a housing commission because I think that everybody recognizes, that there is a need for housing in Stamford. I think the issue is that there are some people who believe that building luxury apartments, which makes certain people a lot of money, is the best way to create a situation where there's housing in the city. The zoning board and the planning board really could use the power of their special exceptions. And so if you want to build something in Stamford, you have to go with the current master plan, the current zoning regulations. But if you want to build something bigger or wider or taller or more units, you need to get special permission from the zoning board and the planning board first and the zoning board. I envision a zoning board that demands more for another floor, more affordable housing. I envision a zoning board that could possibly demand more than the current zoning board does for a larger footprint. So, we are building affordable housing in the city, but we're not building enough. We're not building enough median income housing in the city. That our affordable housing, I think more than half of the stock, you need to actually make more than $70,000 or $75,000 a year to even apply for it. That's considered affordable. And it's really important to know that every time we put up a building that has 450 or 500 luxury apartments, you're bringing in more people, which is good, but people who have a higher income, which means that the median income is going to increase. So if you are somebody who is getting affordable housing at a particular rate, you may no longer be able to qualify at a certain level because the median income has increased in Stamford so much that you're actually changing what is considered affordable. So the more we build luxury apartments in the city, the harder it is at a lower income rate that you can even access the affordable units. So unless there's a zoning board that's going to really demand more really affordable units in exchange for allowing 100 extra units on a site, you're going to have an increase in the wealth gap in the city. And so I'm for affordable housing, so much so that I believe that you can ask developers for more and they're not going to say, no, I won't build here. I'm going to go to Shelton. They're not getting $5,000 for a unit in Shelton. Okay. They're only getting it here. We have what they want. Why wouldn't we ask for more? And that's up to the zoning board and the planning board. And up until this point, I don't think we're getting enough. That's my opinion. So I think if there was a demand and more oversight on the zoning board and planning board, there'd be people on those boards and commissions that would demand more.
And on that point, you look at the people on the planning board now, every person's term has expired. One of the people who spoke at Faith this past Sunday said that over the last 8 years, 150 deeply affordable units were built here in the city of Stamford. But at the same time, they built 3,500 market units. Person went on to say, you know what? He thought that was great. A number of other people have said, you know what? If we're going to be an inclusive city,
Okay, so no more questions. Oh, I'm sorry, Francis, go ahead.
There's another aspect about the housing commission also. It's not just about building, it's also maintaining the affordable inventory that we have right now, which is not happening. Once it gets built, apparently the one person in the housing, they're only looking at the landlords or the developers. We have to have a commission that is going to be able to balance that and to make sure that the everyday person who is living in a below market rate apartment is going to be maintained. Because as it is now, we're starting to lose that while they're only concentrating on building. We also have to maintain what we have now.
But not only just in the below market, we also have to have better services in terms of monitoring the nonprofit sector. You can see the Smythe has replaced 873 Washington Boulevard. And so who's really looking out for the interest of people who've been here since 1960? I think that Stamford should welcome anyone who wants to come here. But the current people who are here should not have to pay the price of having to commute from, we have people commuting from Hartford to come here who were born in this city because they can't afford to buy or rent here. Something has got to be done. And I think the changes that have been proposed in the charter, it's a time that Stamford needs to say yes, so that we can truly look out for everyone in this city, not any one special group. The people can still make money. We're not about making money. It's about giving people equity. Everyone. Equal opportunities, equity, inclusion. For your children want to be there.
Right now, we have one person that's really dedicated to housing. The Housing Commission, it will be a bunch of volunteers who will be additional eyes who will be able to help minister these, these regulations. That also, I think, to also create attendance rights here in the city, which we don't have right now.
I think we're going to start wrapping up. We'll have one last question. Christina?
I'd just like to know what the mayor's plan is as far as supporting the infrastructure for all these apartments and things. You hear about, paving roads. Well, that's all well and good. Yes, we do need that. But we also need more fire, more police, more ambulances, more services like that kind of thing. What is her plan if we have another drought like we did in 2016 when we had thousands of people, less people back then than we do now? So what is her plan? She hasn't even said anything about any of that.
Put in a traffic circle in Japan.
No one here can answer that.
Okay.
That would be the mayor.
I think let's start wrapping up. It's a matter.
Did Mike Papa have a question? Because I saw his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike.
My name is Mike Papa. The only question is, it looks like we have two groups over here. They all have good things to say. But why don't we get something like kind of television? So there is a debate, so the general public knows exactly what's going on. Because a lot of people, they're not deciding.
Mike organized it. We've all tried, all of us on this side, the economies have tried. We would love to. I would do it in a heartbeat.
I said.
They don't want to debate.
No, I mean, it's obvious. That's why there's nobody here from the other side. We're going to start wrapping up. One thing, as a matter of full disclosure, the Neighborhood Coalition wholeheartedly does support this. This effort, it solves a lot of broken issues that we have in the charter. Another matter of disclosure is Shelley is my wife. She's got over 30 years of experience in the financial sector. That was her business, municipal finance. And if anyone thinks I control her, they don't know Shelley. They don't know me. They're out of their mind, because Shelley is an independent, freestanding woman. Sometimes a little too much, but I love her anyway.
So,
and the other, I'd like to ask, if you want to wrap up in about 30 seconds, and Nina, I know that Tom wants to.
Well, one of the things that people kept saying is that the commission did this, commission did that, commission did that. The commissioners didn't decide when the things were going to go on the ballot. That was totally within the purview of the Board of Reps. We had nothing to do with that. I don't think I heard one commissioner say that they were anti-development. They just wanted smart development. And the one thing I want people to understand is I'm not in any camp. I'm not with one side or the other. I've lived here for 30 years, and once I retired, I simply wanted to give back to the city.
Nina, do you want to quick which thing?
Very brief, I'll just say that, vote yes. I think that's pretty obvious. Look, the division in the city is not left or right. The division in the city is between those who have influence, money, and power and those who don't. And I can't speak for any time before I came onto this earth, and you know, my mother who's sitting in the back, I've lived with her my whole life, and I will say that in my lifetime, I don't think that the residents of Stamford have ever had an opportunity like this to come together and support something that truly would change the way that Stamford is able to run its city government and change it in a way that makes it better and more accountable to you. And I'm not gonna lie, like if this fails, I'm gonna be heartbroken, because I really believe that you deserve better than that. And so, you know, I hope that you all come out and vote yes, and you talk to people about this, because the yes campaign doesn't have the money that the no campaign does. But what the yes campaign has is people with love and passion and compassion in their hearts to make this city that we all love a better place. So, you know, don't just walk out of here and be like, oh, you know, I'm gonna vote yes. Like, talk to other people about it. It's really important. So, and I also want to thank the people on the other side, the no side, because I know that they're just as passionate about it. I know they don't view things the same way.
Who's Chris Woodside? Do we know Chris Woodside?
Yeah.
I think Chris Woodside said he wants to come debate you guys because he said you're all so stupid.
That's fine. I'll debate him.
Chris,
He has my phone number.
tell Chris to come to this debate. Call him out.
No, well, I mean, I think people want to leave, but I would absolutely meet you, Chris, at any point in time. I would love to have a public debate with you, me and you, or you can bring somebody else. I can bring whatever you want. I'm there as long as it's not during daylight hours. After daylight hours, I'm good. All right, because I got things to do during the day over the next couple of days. So.
All right, Tom?
I'll be very, very brief. Jeanette Bolchinski was one of the members of our commission. When we introduced everyone else, she wasn't here and came in just moments afterwards. I want to thank everybody who came down tonight. The response was overwhelming. I counted about 60 people from all walks of life. And again, the Board of Representatives had been just very supportive, certainly on the mark with everything they reviewed. We made alterations from our final report based on input from the Board of Reps and input from the public at the final public hearing. But I want to thank my fellow members of the Charter Revision Commission. I didn't know most of you when we started out, and it's just been such a pleasure to work with you over the last year and a half. So thank you all for coming.
I want to thank you all for coming on behalf of the Stamford Neighborhoods Coalition. We would encourage you to vote yes. We've been through the charter many, many times, and really, it's all good for the residents here. It fixes many of the problems and situations that have risen, and we kind of learned from our experiences in the past. And this will make us a better, stronger city and a more participatory city. Thank you again.
Real quick, just for the people online, they were just wondering who are other people that are in the coalition that they might know.
Who are other? Well, I'm going to mention Steve Gorst.
Okay.
You know Mike Battinelli. Those are the two founders of the coalition. You have Paula, who's in the coalition. How much?
No, that's good. That's good. They're just wondering like who else it was, and you weren't claiming to be impartial, but you did try to invite other people.
So we have 2/3 of our coalition are basically Democrats and unaffiliated, and the other third is Republican. We have a mailing list of maybe 2,000 people who identify with the commission. Notice for this meeting went out to well over 1,000 people that we know of, and I know it was voted by others. So it's hard to know what the reach is. People send things to other people.
Yeah.
Just like
awesome. All right, I'm gonna end it. Say thank you to everybody online.
Thank you very much for joining us, and please vote yes for a smarter charter.